welcome to Journeys. I'm today joined by Andrew Martyn, the CEO of Your.Rentals. Andrew, thanks so much for joining me.
Great to be one of your first test bunnies here.
Thank you very much. And I understand you've got a bit of a cold, so your voice is nice and deep and adds to the seniority that you bring.
That's what I like to convey, that authority. So that's perfect.
Perfect, ideal. So let's jump right in with the theme of kind of this little interview. You're born and bred in Australia. Tell me what you wanted to be when you were a kid back then in Australia.
Yeah, and it's not just Australia, but I'm born in the early 70s, let's say. So growing up in the 70s and early 80s as a kid, it was old-fashioned, you could say. So I wanted to be a fireman. That's my earliest memory of career choice, fireman.
I mean, the thousands of kids listening today will agree, an absolute classic. And fireman known for saving people's lives and doing raunchy calendars. But yeah, you're obviously not sitting in a fire truck today, so that didn't happen. What was kind of the career that you studied for as a young man? Kind of what did you learn?
Well, I mean, I grew up in a city called Adelaide, which if you've traveled to Australia, you probably know where it is. Maybe you didn't go there, but I did not know what I wanted to do until quite late in my life, I would say. So I finished high school, had pretty good grades, but not enough to go into a really serious career. So I chose to study a Bachelor of Arts with a major in psychology. So I went to university. That was something my whole family did, which was a great thing. And even through these years studying psychology, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. So no idea at that point.
But I think it's definitely similar to kind of learning business, kind of trying to understand oneself and trying to understand people. I think always helps, even though I think it's an endless journey. And again, even though this has probably some sort of therapeutic value here, what we're doing for both of us. I'm not lying on your couch, and also that didn't really play out as your career. So once you kind of finished your studies, where did you go from there?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't go into a career in psychology. I mean, in Australia, you finish your bachelor's when you're 21. I had enough problems of my own at that age and enough life learning that I didn't feel that I was in a position to advise other people on their own lives. So still not knowing what to do, I actually met with the careers department at the university and said, I don't know what to do here. And they said, well, that's not that abnormal. Why don't you apply for some of these graduate programs that the big companies offer, right? And then you can try and figure out what it is you like doing. So I applied for 3 or 4 of these graduate programs, and 2 of them I got accepted. The first one to accept me was the Australian Department of Defence. So military career or military administration. Okay. And my brother was living in Canberra, which is the capital of Australia, working for the government. And I thought, that's a pretty good option. I can go and live near him and take a step away from home. But then I got an offer from the largest telco in Australia. And their program was quite different. So it wasn't just a lackey boy coming in and making coffee for people. This was a leadership program where they did a whole lot of psych profiling and everything, and selected, in the end, it was 19 people from all around the company on that leadership program. So that was my choice in the end. And I went into big telco.
Which back at that time, there was kind of also, what year are we now? Is this late 80s, early
90s? 92, 93? That's a good question.
So that was also then where slowly the internet started becoming a thing. And I know
that's right.
You were kind of a pioneer a little bit on that field.
Yeah, so I mean, I was still living with my parents while I started that career, and I had my bedroom, and I bought one of the earliest Apple computers, and with my first paycheck, and sat in my room connecting to the internet at night on the old dial-up 28.8 kilobit modem. So I was very early user of internet, you could say, and then. Within this program, you got to spend time in different departments in the company. And one of these rotations, I was in the customer support call center. And we started getting all these calls from nerds saying my modem won't connect. And nobody knew what the hell that was. So, but I did. So, in fact, I wrote a training program for thousands of call center staff, like some slide deck. What is the internet? How does it work? What are our customers using it for? And probably about 3 or 4 months later, I got this call out of the blue from some big wig manager in Sydney. Said, "Hey, we're starting a new division in the company to build internet products. Would you like to come and join and be a junior product manager?" I didn't know what a product manager was, but I said yes. So that was kind of my first step into the online world, if you like.
And then for how long did you do this?
So we were tasked with building the first broadband internet ISP in the world. There was a reason the company was being privatized, so it was government owned, and they were private, and they had this huge asset of this HFC network that they needed to show could generate some revenue. And that was our job to launch a broadband internet service in 1996, which was actually the second commercial launch in the world, if I'm not wrong, after one launch in the US. So I just fell in love with this role of product manager, where you're working with product, technology, figuring that out. How are we going to sell this? How do we price it? Build the business case for it. I was really into numbers, always loved math. Yeah. Working with, building up a support team. How do you support the product and everything in marketing, working with ad agencies, etc. So I found it fascinating to be in the middle of everything and kind of controlling everything and making sure it came together. So I did that for about 3 years, and then moved to another role in Melbourne with the same manager. She brought me in to do another role, which was also interesting. And in 99, they had a scholarship for the company. This is a 90,000 employee company at the time, which was for an MBA scholarship. One winner, and she nominated me, and I won the scholarship. So that was kind of a turning point. I tried my hand at all the business aspects without really having any educational background in it. And I got to take 18 months off on full pay and study an MBA at Melbourne Business School. A big turning point for me. And I think when I left the MBA and came back to the big corporate, I just decided, hey, this is not for me. I want to be in control. So bad investment on their part, but great for me.
Yeah, you really paid that back with thanks for showing me, opening my eyes, and see ya. But then again, yeah, sure. I mean, it's also maybe the idea to train the future entrepreneurs, and you can't have it both ways. Kind of educate people and show them the world, and then expect them to continue kind of doing what they've been doing previously. And then, is that the point where you started thinking of venturing out into the world, or did you start any projects in Australia?
Yeah, no, I mean, I had sort of left home, moved to Sydney, big city, moved to Melbourne, another great big city. And during that year, I met a Danish girl. So we were kind of long distance dating, traveling back and forth. And I really fell in love with Copenhagen as a city. And I remember when I kind of decided this is not for me anymore, I need a life change here. I pulled together a group of my friends in Melbourne. We threw this amazing dinner party where I put it on the table. I said, guys, I'm thinking about moving to Denmark. and I need your advice. Should I do it? And unanimously, maybe it was the red wine. Do it. You never get a chance. Take risks and just do it.
It's always good to
So
advise other people on taking a risk. It's such a great thing to be part of that. It's like, you should definitely risk that, because I'm going to enjoy either way, you being successful or you gloriously failing. Um, yeah, great group of friends. But no, I think it's the support you need from people to kind of give you this extra edge. And also, I mean, yeah, Denmark and Australia, obviously, like a great, how do you say it? Very different.
a contrast.
Yeah, contrast. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Small and Nordic, very large on the absolute other side of the world. So you said goodbye to your pet koala, packed your bags. How much luggage did you take with you?
I never. This is a long time ago. This is 22 years back, but I remember the maximum luggage, and I did buy some excess luggage, but it was not more than a couple of pretty big suitcases. Famously, I brought some cookbooks from Australia. They're still on the shelf, and I'm reminded of this by my wife all the time. You brought those from Australia? But back to the contrast. Yes, Denmark and Australia are quite different in terms of climate, nature, everything else. But I've had the joy of living also here in Sweden now, where I've been for the last 13 years. Not far from Denmark. Done business in Norway. Have had friends and people I know in Finland and travelled there. And of the Nordic countries, Denmark is very similar to Australia culturally in many ways. Much more similar than the other Nordic countries. So it has a really special place in my heart, Denmark, and particularly Copenhagen. Aussies and Danes get along so well that they imported their princess from Australia as well. So,
okay. I didn't know.
not so different apart from the weather, I would say.
Okay. So you land in Denmark. You unpack. You've got a girlfriend. How was it? I mean, Danes obviously speak super well English. Did you start kind of practicing Danish?
I did. I had a couple of goes at it, actually. So spoiler alert, it didn't work out with the first girlfriend. Yeah. Unfortunately. I did go to a sort of group Danish class and picked up a little bit here and there, but it's really challenging when you're in a country where people speak English so well. They want to practice their English. So It was only maybe 3 or 4 years later that I decided to do it seriously. So I did some really intensive one-on-one Danish and became, I would say, very close to fluent. I've lost a bit of that moving to Sweden because the languages are a bit different, but I can still do Danish when necessary. Yes.
It's also, I mean, like I understand completely the experience. When I moved to Spain, it took me a while to kind of really took a serious approach to learning the language. And if you don't, you're kind of scratching on the surface. You're always kind of on this tourist level, which limits. It's just limiting, and also you don't really understand the culture. And connecting with people is obviously a big roadblock. And then, how did you get into kind of? What was your first job then in Denmark?
Yeah, so I literally came without a job. I knew I'd figure it out. And there was a guy I had studied with, a Danish guy that. Still good friends, although we don't see each other enough today, who had an internet startup, a .com startup. This was back in the boom days, right? In the end of 2000, early 2001. So I joined his company as a sort of product strategy and sales strategy, which I did for short of a year. I think on 9/11, I can remember sitting in the office there in Copenhagen, and us all watching these planes fly into big tall buildings. And I mean, that was horrific, but I think in the coming days after that, it was just like, shit, this is over. This .com ride's over. And very quickly the bubble burst, and that company couldn't raise new finance, so I left that, and that was really the trigger for me to network a lot in Copenhagen, and found some guys who were doing some really interesting consulting work, and agreed to join forces with them. And we had a small consulting company together for a couple of years that was great fun. Not financially very lucrative, but we had fun, and I built a network there, and it was the first step for me to become an entrepreneur, I guess.
And consulting is also very, very time consuming, because it's your hours that are being built.
Exactly. Yeah, so we were, I mean, I won't go into details, but we were doing consulting for big mobile phone companies, for Nokia, Ericsson, others back in the day. Yeah. They were building smartphones, but there was nothing to do with smartphones at that stage, right? There were no apps or anything like that. So we actually worked between them and all the different content and big companies in Denmark, basically telling them about what this mobile internet revolution was going to become, and helping them take the first steps. So, we were even doing software development, mobile app software development. This was back in 2002, 2003, pretty early days. It was very interesting, but like you say, I had bigger ambitions. I'd rather have a business that is making money while I sleep, rather than having to be out there selling my hours.
So what was your first project that you started yourself?
Yes, I had an idea for an online music platform. Famously, we set it up in Malmö, southern Sweden, which is why I moved across here with my wife. We were married a year after we moved over. And I think around the same time, Spotify was launching up in Stockholm. We had completely different business model, but we raised some funds and developed a platform where artists could directly sell their music, merchandise, stream videos, and earn money from ad revenue. So if you take bits out of the YouTube and Spotify business model and put it in control of the artists themselves, then that was the idea. It was like, we called it direct to consumer business model. So that was really the first business I built from the ground up.
But then, was it Spotify that caused that to come to an end, or?
No. To be honest, they were building one way, we were building another. We knew of each other, I guess, back then. But it was, unfortunately, the financial crisis that hit that really made companies that were not at a decent revenue stage really difficult to raise money for. So although we had massive traction, I mean, we were signing deals with big record labels in the Nordics because they saw that they didn't want the artists to go directly without them. So we had a platform that they could use for the artists they signed. We were talking with, management companies, sort of very famous musicians. We had a lot of the Swedish independent musicians signed up on the platform, and Danish as well. But the financial crisis hit, and turns out we didn't have the right investors behind us. And the company died a very quick death, unfortunately. It was probably, in my career, the most emotional moment of my career, which took many years to get over, because we were really building something great, but young me didn't really know how to get through that.
Yeah, that's I can only try to imagine how that feels, kind of when you build something and you have the feeling that you're on the right track, and it's the opportunity. And I think, the right projects with the right funding, when the chips kind of fell into place, those are kind of then some of today's recognized brands. And there were other companies who had similarly good ideas, but there was just kind of one element or two elements missing, and well, never heard of again. Did your psychology study help there at all, or was that kind of retreat with friends and family and recharge batteries?
Yeah, look, again, it's a little while ago, but honestly, I still talk about this experience today. So yeah, I mean, having family around you gives you the support you need, because I mean, okay, our careers and work are probably at the end of the day secondary to our family. So I at least had that to fall back on. We had our first child around that time as well, and but from a purely business career point of view, no, it took many years to work through that. I'll be honest.
Okay.
But anyway, I think the thing is, and you know, as you get older and wiser with grey hairs on your chin, you know, being an entrepreneur and choosing to do that, risk taking and failure is a part of the gig. And I did a course in my MBA. I remember it still 22, 23 years ago, called entrepreneurship. And we had this fantastic professor, I don't know his name, from the US, that had been an entrepreneur himself. And he said, look, I know the entrepreneurs in the room are not going to pay attention and listen because you're all thinking about your ideas, but take away this lesson here. A successful entrepreneur who's built a great company has usually, it is their third go on average building a company when they succeed. If you hit it on your first go, you're just lucky. And I think he's correct, because there's so much to learn about being an entrepreneur. I mean, from that case, I could take so many learnings, and one of the major ones being the investors behind the company are so important, that you have the same values and you have the same vision, including how long. This is really important. And
to appreciate kind of like there will be bumps in the road and we'll have to go through them together, and not like, oh, hold on, it's not the straight line up, and
exactly.
we disappear. So, okay, so did that help you, like you said, with your following projects to say filter through, or with your latest project now, to filter through investors a little bit more carefully?
Absolutely. I mean, it was when we started and founded Your.Rentals, you know, we did it in a way where that was absolutely my number one criteria. Was I'm only doing this if I have the right investors behind it, and thankfully we did have, because you know, we launched Your.Rentals a bit more than 6 years ago, and there's been some pretty significant road bumps along the way, and these guys have been absolutely fantastic the whole journey. You couldn't ask for better investors. So if I hadn't learned the lesson the first time, maybe we wouldn't be talking about this right now together.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. You had the benefit of kind of going through the dot-com bust, going through the financial crisis, and then COVID hit, and everyone was just looking at each other, shrugging their shoulders and saying, now what? And with Your.Rentals, I understand your service is 100% commission based, and no bookings means no commission, means no
revenue.
Money to pay the bills.
Yeah, and I mean, look, it forced us to really come up with an emergency plan very quickly. I mean, of course, all companies did it, but I think the good thing about our plan was that we just expected this would go on for a couple of years. I mean, that was the first assumption, because no one knew, you know. So how do we get through a couple of years here? And, you know, unfortunately, it does take the wind out of the sails a bit, but we really focused the team on saying, okay, there's very limited demand there. If we can figure out how to get the lion's share of that demand for our hosts and property managers, whatever we do to do that teaches us that when things turn good again, we'll be punching above average weight. So we did do that. We didn't lay off any people, and to this day, I'm really proud of that. And we really pulled the team together to say, look, we're going to get through this together, but we all have to, you know, put in. People made sacrifices and to get through it, but we had a strong culture and a strong team that believed that it would end and we would be stronger on the other side, and that's absolutely the case over the last year or so.
because that's like these crises where obviously where employees understand that we're all in this together. Um, it's definitely kind of the opportunity for a binding element and kind of strengthening the company culture. And I guess there were examples out there where companies kind of broke apart and employees maybe felt left alone, and other companies where maybe communication was key and being transparent about the financial situation and what can and what cannot be done. And I think for having experienced this myself, kind of with my employer back then, to kind of understand like, okay, I'm willing to do extra because I know that everyone kind of in the team is kind of pulling their weight.
Yeah, I mean it's a real stress test, right? These sort of things on your culture, on your model, on your customers. I mean, we saw we're really prepared for a lot of business failure in our customer base or our, our host and property managers, but we really didn't see it. We did see some cases, of course, but it was not the massive wave we felt was coming. We really tried to support them, be understanding, because it was impacting us in exactly the same way it was impacting them. So yeah, it was a big stress test for the company, but thankfully we did the right things during that period, and on the upside, it pays back even more.
Do you remember kind of when COVID started to hit, when you realized like, hey, this is going to be an issue for your rentals?
I had just been in Australia visiting family for the first time in many years, actually, over Christmas. And I came back and there was all these news reports starting to pop up in January. And I had a trip to our Hanoi office planned in February with one of my colleagues. And he said, hey, you know what? I don't think I'm going to risk it. Is that okay? And I said, sure. I mean, it's up to you. Yeah. I don't think this is anything really. So I went. I came back, and it was really that first week in March when we just started to see lockdowns being announced, and just this mass of cancellations. And I thought, okay, this is serious. So that was where we first felt that this is not like anything we've tried before. And to be honest, March and April was just, it's a blur in my head right now. I still can't remember exactly what we did, but I remember it being very stressful, very high intensity, really trying to figure out how do we get through this? How long is it going to last? Sucking up all the information we could, talking to customers, helping them try not to be too concerned, but saying, we don't know, nobody knows. I mean, it's a blur for me those couple of months, to be honest.
I remember I was invited to a webinar kind of with other experts from the industry, and I refused to join because I thought, like, what am I going to say? Anything I say will just be a wild guess, and I don't really feel like putting my opinion out on something that I completely do not understand and have absolutely no idea how this is going to play out. So it's just like, thanks, no thanks. I don't feel comfortable talking about this situation.
Yeah. Totally agree. I mean, forecasting for the next 2 years after that is, something like that.
But then we did, and like we both of us, you and me, kind of, we talked about this before this session, had kind of similar experiences in the .com bust, in the financial bust, kind of projects just kind of clashing with the situation. But then, hey, third time lucky, we were kind of on the right side of history for once. Vacation rentals in COVID kind of did boom. People were avoiding hotels. No one wanted to stand at a hotel buffet or sharing the pool with other people. Did you see at some point where your rentals and kind of your clients got kind of like a COVID boost, where people started to discover vacation rentals as a kind of as an alternative?
Yeah, I mean, I think during the summer of 2020, was it? Yes.
2020,
the first summer
2020
was just domestic, fully domestic travel. And, for us, we don't have a massive customer base in Denmark. It's mostly the south of Europe. And that was a moment where we wish we did. That was a record summer for Danish summer house industry, because Danes stayed at home. They spent a lot of money in their own country. And yes, of course, we saw similar things, and we saw similar things last year as well, where we had an absolute record year, and all the metrics are kind of off the chart with ADRs that are great and length of stay, which is longer. And I think we will still see that this year. I mean, Booking.com had some pretty interesting research they shared last week at the Click event in Amsterdam, showing this. I think it was people who are planning a holiday of a lifetime for this year. So people are still spending. There's a bit of there's this pool of economy as well. So we've seen a higher than expected cancellation rate early in the year, but I think that's people readjusting what they booked before the inflation and economy started to pinch. Yeah. So I'm still hopeful that we do have another record year this year. But the only thing we can be certain of is that there are still going to be road bumps ahead. The future looks really bright. If you look out 10 years, it's going to be great, but there will be more road bumps on the way for sure.
Yeah. We're coming slowly to an end, but I also wanted to touch on, I know you recently did a financing round and chose the path of including crowdfunding.
Yes.
Tell me about that a little bit, please.
So I mean, we're still doing the round. So we chose to use Cedar's equity crowdfunding platform as part of the round. There's a lot of elements to the round. I think, we wanted to raise last year, if I'm open and honest, and the conditions were just horrible for raising multiples down. A lot of risk in the market that made people keep their wallets shut in the community. So we just said, look, let's take it into our own hands and do something a bit different. Why not? So we're doing a mix of different things, and crowdfunding being part of that. So far, it's been really successful. We're still open for another week or so. We at Your.Rentals, we don't call our hosts and property managers customers. They're really our partners. We share the upside, we share the risk with them, and really we see our role as making them more successful and more profitable. It's quite different to many other SaaS providers that just have to keep you happy to pay your license fee. We really want to engage with this community of hosts and property managers. And, last year we started to get a lot of, these requests for, product, we need this, we need that. And we thought, well, we need finance to scale our development, which is the main reason for doing the financing round now. Why don't we ask our customers if they want to be part of this from a finance shareholder point of view? And it's been really successful. I mean, not everyone has the money to invest. That's fine. But some people, some really surprising people have put in great investments and will be part of the journey with us as a shareholder as well. So it's to raise more money to help them perform better. And we just wanted to open up. I must say, crowdfunding is a lot of work, though. That's my lesson from this one. It's not as simple as it looks from the outside.
Yeah, it's not just putting up a website and sending some links out. Okay.
Nope.
As we come to an end, tell me a little bit about maybe your personal future and Your.Rentals' future. If and when Your.Rentals comes to a glorious, whatever the end game is, could you see yourself do kind of another project, or would you go into I spread my wisdom on the younger entrepreneurs in this world?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and there are different scenarios of how it might play out. I mean, I'm having so much fun doing what we're doing here. I don't have an expiry date on Your Rentals. As long as we're building value for our customers and therefore building value for the business and shareholders, then I'm excited to keep doing it. My role has changed a lot. So we're hiring some more experienced people and more specialists into the team at the moment, just to back up those experienced and successful and experienced people we have already. So my role is really going to be a lot more outside the company, spreading the word about why what we're doing we think's the best option for small business property managers and hosts. And we'll see where it takes us. But when this is finished one day, I don't know. I think the one occupation I didn't mention, could have mentioned, was a teacher. I always loved teaching. Okay. And that's a lot of my role in the company as well, is teaching and learning myself, but teaching and coaching people. So I think, if I could choose a future where Your Rentals is successful and I'm no longer required, I'd like to really put back into younger entrepreneurs, maybe help them not have two failures before their success, and coach the next generation. That's probably where my future lies.
Perfect. I think that's a really, really nice final words, and hopefully you're helping me to get this little podcast thing to be not a failure. So Andrew, thank you so much. I know we never get enough time to talk, but I really appreciate that you spent the time and that you brought your slightly cold with you today. I really love the story. So thanks for everything today.
Thanks a lot, Flo. It's always great chatting with you, and thanks for inviting me on the podcast. Can't wait to see it.